No, is she coming in by phone or something?
I think she's watching the live stream
And
and
can't communicate with us.
cannot.
Okay, well,
Not unless she texts to us during a meeting.
well, we
I'm
hope the
not
live stream is working,
going
otherwise
to
nobody's
lie.
taking that.
Yes.
It
may
is
have-
working.
I may have not, I have the printed stuff, I just left it behind because I ran out the door as fast as I could. I'm still sweating.
Well, here's an
Okay.
agenda,
Thank you, Mark.
but that's all I'm
You
sharing.
haven't actually officially started the meeting yet, have you?
Nope.
Okay, I've got Otter running just in case, which isn't, it transcribes
Ah,
and
perfect.
produces everything, so.
So if need be, we can send it to you.
Yes.
Let's do a call to order at 12:02. First off, citizen comments. I'm guessing we don't have any because nobody's here to say them or read an email that may or may not have come in. So moving on to discussion items, we have Eric Peterson.
Yes, is it time for me to do the thingamajigger?
The thingamajigger, yes sir, please.
No. Excuse me, but I'm sending something to Mark real quick that affects him that he didn't know about till right now, so give me a second, Mark. So I don't forget a short-term memory issue, so.
Well, not only am I not going to check my phone, I'm going to shut it off.
That's okay, but I just sent you an email on the amended agenda. All right. Okay, so I am talking today about the Idaho version of the white cane law. If you see these two statements of policy of the state, you generally find in sections and whatever about there's a reason we do this, and this is what the policy of the state prior to 2019, blind, visually impaired, hearing impaired, and otherwise physically disabled, free and open, participate in the economy, etc. 2019, there was major revisions in this area with some complications, which I'll mention. And it's now, they took the blind, visually impaired, etc., and just changed it to individuals with disabilities. A broader term. Let's see if I get this right. Yeah. I'm talking about specifically Idaho white cane law. They're different than other states now. The white cane laws, the laws didn't come until, I'll tell you about that, but people who are blind, have visual issues, have been using all sorts of things. You'll see the movies with the cane, or the staff, whatever else. So they had a lot of different ways, and in about the 20s, James Biggs was kind of owned a factory or whatever else, but he got in an accident, he went blind, and he had a cane. And he took to the practice of standing at intersections, taking his cane and waving it in the air, okay? Nobody really paid much attention to it, so he painted it white. And then he still waved it in the air. So from that was probably the first use of the white cane. And that kind of grew as just people adopted it because it worked. And in '64, about the time all the civil rights laws and everything are coming in, they put in actually it was a joint resolution. I borrowed this from somebody, I didn't catch that, to recognize they have a white cane day now. It's October 15th. What it does now is it's been in a teaching or education component, so motorists identify a person with a white cane with a red tip generally as being blind, and that they should take caution. And October 15th each year, the federal the blind, whatever, I'm in the Idaho Blind Group.
Commission for the Blind.
Not Commission for the Blind, that's state. It's the actual Federation of the Blind for Idaho, and it's the National Federation of the Blind, which is, they do all sorts of things. I'm a lifelong member, not because I'm blind, just because I joined, trying to educate myself on the component of the disabilities. Anyway, blindness, you've all heard the 20/20, and you kind of wonder about what's blindness, what's not. Well, your visual, you got 20/20 to about 20/60. What a person with normal average vision of 20/20, what they can see at 60 feet, you can see at 20 feet. That's the 20/60. And if you're in metric, it would be slightly different numbers, just using a meter instead of feet. All right, now, you're 20 to 60, you're getting around okay pretty much. You get up above 20 to 60, up to 2200, that's a medium one. And when you approach that 2200, you're becoming visually impaired to the point it's affecting your life and your activities of daily living. Now, can these be corrected? Yes. If they're corrected, you're not really disabled, as long as you've got access to the ability to get it corrected. Some people have such vision that no, it's not correctable. Severe is anything from 2200 to 2400. It actually goes up to like 2200. Now, you get to the 2012 you're entering the blind territory. So what a normal person could see at 1200 feet, you'll kind of probably see your fingers like this. So that you are blind. But and it's a serious thing, most of the blindness arises with age. You've got macular degeneration, cataracts. I just had cataract removed. My body and the immune system didn't like it. So if you saw me wearing patches and other things, I'm finally just getting adjustments. I wear a contact lens in this eye because we'll never do the surgery here. And this one's been corrected, but I have a field where the vitreous, which is a jello in your eye, is split. So I get this distortion and everything looks kind of foggy. But anyway, 85% of people have light perception of some sort of the blind. About 15% have no visual perception. They are what you think of when you think of blind, is they cannot see at all. Okay, what and where is Idaho's white cane law, and where do you even find out about it? Knowledge of it's kind of maybe an important thing. When I was doing this, I was working with the Idaho Federation of the Blind, and there's some corrections we got to do, and we were looking at running statutes changes this year. But this year, if you're at all familiar with the changes in the legislature, a lot of us decided not to run any bills or corrections because we had no idea what was going to happen. So there's been a delay, and we got a feeling now for how to do the advocacy for it. All right, Idaho Driver's License Handbook, it's actually wrong right now. It says right away, vehicles must yield to a pedestrian when in a marked or unmarked crosswalk at an intersection, then the alley, or the pedestrian is a blind person walking with a white cane or a guide dog. Notice how they excluded marked or unmarked crosswalk at the intersection. What does that mean? Blind person crosses anywhere, they have the right of way, period. Okay? That's just a general statement. The laws are much more detailed. All right, these are laws that were put into, or definitions that were put into effect in 2019. If you remember that original thing, for the purpose of, this is where things really changed quite a bit, and far more than most states in the nation. An assistance device means a cane or walking stick, predominantly white or metallic in color, with or without a red tip. That would be the standard thing, or a dog. And yeah, or if you were hearing disabled, and how do you tell if someone's hearing disabled? Do you look for their hearing aid? Anyway, or other similar devices that enhance the safety or mobility of a disabled person. That just changed everything. 3, individual with a disability is now defined by the Americans with Disability Act. How do you have a disability? You have an interference with one or more activities of daily living. What does that mean? If you work in the social services area or such, you understand activities of daily living, maybe buttoning your shirt, cooking for yourself, going to get groceries, driving, whatever. I have limitations in activities of daily living. You can pretty well guess what they are. I cannot drive. I would kill somebody. So I voluntarily quit driving. There's another funny story about that, but it's another time. Okay, Yes, ask a question at any time. by the
Would
way.
a person who is deaf, hearing impairment, be encouraged to use a white cane?
That's a good question. See anything in the back of my chair?
They're allowed to use one, obviously.
Maybe. I'll get more into that.
It's in the individuals with disabilities.
Yes, it is.
So anyone with disability could use one.
Yes, it does.
I'm just
And-
wondering if they should be recommended, because what I've heard from people with hearing impairment is they can't hear electric cars.
Oh, I can't hear electric cars.
They don't-
my
they don't
hearing's
make an
okay.
engine noise, and so
Yeah.
it's creating a danger.
I think it's a good idea, but it's a personal choice of anyone to use any type of assistive device. And I find a lot of people don't like using them. One, they need the exercise, but really they don't want to be classified and looked at as a disabled person. And well, I'm to the other extreme. I can't leave my house unless I count on you knowing I'm disabled and what my disability is, so you don't tie up the fire truck, 911. It's a drama act if I don't have a sign. All right, now, we all have the right to free use of the streets, highways, sidewalks, walkways, public buildings, public facilities, and other places of public accommodations. I'm going to clarify this. If it's a roadway that is not private, we all have these uses. We don't have these rights for private driveway, private roads, etc. And trails count as this. And anyway,
Trails on public land.
trails on public land or where trails intersect a road, then it's a public road. Then you have the right of you actually have these rights, you can cross them there.
What about private parking lots? I
No.
would think that's the biggest issue.
It's not, you don't have these rights. Okay. I can't say that there's other rights that you have. And yes, I have handled suits where people are sued over things that are bad in the public.
So people
workplace.
up at the Lewiston Mall parking lot,
They would be, if they're injured there due to a defect in the mall parking lot, the owner, leaser, lesser would have liability issues.
true, but I mean, if someone's driving across the parking lot and strikes some visually impaired person or someone in a
Interesting
wheelchair, that's
Interesting
not a
question.
public issue, that's not an ADA issue?
No, it's a liability issue. And the owner of this and the car drivers, that's a clear liability issue. It's more a question of, is it a strict liability issue? And it's a semi-strict, as we're all getting to in a minute. If you don't know what that means, it means if you do it and you're the one that caused it, you don't really have a defense. It's just kind of cut and dried, you're liable, let's just get to the insurer. So anyway, if we're not, the real big question comes is what if you're not using something?
Mhm.
But here, let's go to, this is the core of the Idaho White Cane Law, and I will tell you there's probably 12 or 13 statutes out there that all make up the White Cane Law, because they're all related. Now, the big change, this was put in 2019, and it goes, in individual disabilities, any person, whether a pedestrian operating a vehicle or otherwise, who approaches an individual appearing to be, that's a big deal. An individual with a disability or lawfully using an assistance device or service dog, lawfully using, I'm going to come back to that, and who intentionally, they got to intend, whatever that means in this context, fails to stop, change course, speak, or take other action necessary to avoid any accident or injury to the individual with a disability, the assistance device or service dog, you wreck my chair, you're going to pay for it. Kill my dog, you're going to pay for it, is guilty of a misdemeanor. So, all those times when I'm moving out of the intersection and I'm there with my wheelchair, my yellow stuff, and now a white cane, and people just zoom right past me, they haven't injured me, but boy, they're close. And if they do that, it's like if you're there and they just drive around you, and somehow cause you to fall over, have me have an event, and have me then get hit by another car, they're gonna be liable. Criminal charge, beyond a reasonable doubt. Punishable, 6 months, it's a standard misdemeanor thing. But they've got the criminal charge. Now, here's the civil part, another statute. Civil action may be brought against any person intentionally violating the impressions of 185811, which is the other one. So, if they get a ticket, proof is already there beyond a reasonable doubt. Here, you have to have proof, a preponderance of the evidence. What does that mean? This is a scale, and you take a look at the evidence and facts and circumstances, and if it tips 1% this way, and you're on this side, you win. Tips the other way, they win. Okay, a lot lower than a preponderance, beyond a reasonable doubt, which is what's beyond a reasonable doubt? Yeah, any idiot knows that this is obviously what happened. I mean, I shouldn't say that way. Now, Mark's question. The failure of a disabled person to use an assistance device or service dog shall not be held to constitute nor be evidence of contributory negligence in any civil action. Contributory negligence is, I did something, I didn't look, I was not paying attention, whatever. And it's gonna be balanced in this preponderance of the evidence. So if I have some fault, it kind of tips it that way. If they can't show that, then it tips that way. So it's all in the evidence stuff. Now, if a white cane dog doesn't apply in an accident, I'm held to the same standard as everybody else, and subject to the same law of tort and negligence. But that provision right there says, you can't blame me for not having my wheelchair, my white cane, or anything else. It's not going to enter into evidence. Yes. Mark's an attorney, by the way.
I'm back to the issue of private property. I mean, it's obvious all of this applies when it's on public streets and public walkways and everything else. But if you're in the mall or any other large parking lot, and somebody backing out of a parking space doesn't realize that this person walking by is visually impaired, and they just make the assumption that, oh, well, surely you see my car backing up. You must see my car backing up. I didn't realize you were visually impaired. And then you back into the person,
Okay.
because they don't see you, they don't hear you.
This statute doesn't address
Private property?
public or private. I would use this as a provision if I was filing a civil suit.
A civil suit, clearly.
And it's
You could file
civil,
this
this is civil.
It's whether or
and
not
the
the
criminal-
criminal statute that they can.
Correct. The criminal
Take it.
statute, in my opinion, and it's just an opinion because I can't practice law because I have an inactive license. My thought process as a normal individual
Mhm.
is that only applies in the public context, whereas this, I think you could use in the private context.
And you
Um,
can't, if you were sued in a case like that, civil suit,
Yes,
you cannot bring a defense of contributory negligence if the person wasn't using an assisted device.
correct,
You can't defend yourself by saying, I had no way to know.
correct. But that now gets into intent. Did I know? And I'll tell you a case that you'll kind of be flabbergasted at, but got a four-way intersection. And it's a pretty big one, commercial, big trucks are using it. Big truck comes to a stop. There's a person standing on the corner, actually holding a white cane with sunglasses. All right?
Should know.
The white cane blocked the view, her body blocked the view of the cane. She just had it like this. And all he's doing is just glances like this. He starts out and turns. She starts walking without knowledge the truck has moved. She walks under the trailer and is crushed by the back tires. Okay, she's killed.
It's a real story
Real case.
in Idaho.
No, it was Washington. Can't remember, but so that person died. All right, it was a dark day. So you have a person on a dark day wearing sunglasses standing at a corner. Is that enough to know that that person was disabled and that this white cane law should actually apply. And it would say if a person using a cane, you're gonna have this strict liability. What would your answer be?
Taking out the element of the disability, say it was just a regular pedestrian.
Yes.
Who had the right of way? Did the truck have the
The truck had
green
stopped.
light to turn?
She was simply standing, it
to
was a
turn
four-way
right or
stop.
left?
Four-way stop. She's just standing on the corner.
Oh, not a traffic light.
Not a
a
traffic light, four-way stop.
Well, you're supposed to yield to pedestrians under a normal circumstance.
Yeah, well, the question was, did he have knowledge of her blindness?
Did it matter?
Yes. Yes.
Well, that's my question. A regular pedestrian would not have had.
She didn't
the
start
right of
up
way?
when he was stopped. So she's standing there as he's looking, and then he starts. Yeah, it was tough. But they did not find that he could know. And you have to be able to form the intent with knowledge of a disability. So if a person's there and they're not moving, you can't tell it, right? Versus someone, let's say, has cerebral palsy, and they're always got they may have a gait issue or something like that, they may be standing like this. That's probably sufficient knowledge that an average person would think there's something not quite right with this person. So that is a question that's always going to be there. Did you know of the possibility of a disability? That's where I think it's at. So it's not quite the strict liability. It's like, did they know? Now there's also another question. Do they have to know about the law? Right now, the only law that we have showing that the common person would know is the driver's manual, and it's wrong. I've already dealt with that. They're fixing it this next edition. So this is the whoops. When you have something going on in the legislature, and things like this oftentimes get held to the last week, the last couple of days of the session, and there were obviously a lot of people involved in this. These were not caught. The 49706, it was included because it now says pedestrian with a disability instead of the blind, whatever, has a right of way to an individual with a disability. The last part should have been deleted. Carrying a clearly visible white cane or accompanied by a service dog. That didn't belong in there anymore, but it was left, it was overlooked. Also, in the criminal code,
So the sentence should end after an individual with a disability?
yes.
Okay.
And that was going to be, this is what we were going to do this session, but decided it was too dangerous. One, we haven't gotten a hold of all the people who were involved in 2019. But so that's there, and that's complicating because it says clearly visible white cane. If there's some sort of lawsuit, yeah, this could be used against you. Now, a criminal code, a misdemeanor, blind persons only may use a white or red white cane. This just got totally, says basically you're committing a misdemeanor if you use a white cane. See what I have? I'm now possibly committing a misdemeanor. I'm personally carrying a white cane and take my chances on the prosecutor declining to bring charges because this is so fouled up. But they could also say this is so fouled up, I don't know what to do it on the other side. And the civil side, this is so fouled up, I don't know what to do on the other side. These need to be changed. Hopefully this next session, I'm working with the president of the Idaho Federation of the Blind, and we'll see, but we still need to find people. So right now, it's the education about the Idaho white cane law. When I first was gonna do this, and I asked for the new police chief to be here. I'll meet with a new police chief because the odds are pretty high. None of them know about the white cane law, nor would they act on it. It's going to be an extremely low priority, and you're really relying on common courtesy. Common courtesy to me for the stoppage is about 30% of the drive-by population.
At a crosswalk?
At a crosswalk.
In
Or
this-
when I come up, yeah, in Lewiston, Clarkston.
In
Or
this
when I
city,
come out of
yeah.
an alley. 'Cause
I'm sure it's higher in Moscow.
Moscow.
They stop for everything.
They stop for everything. Moscow.
Yeah, 2 questions. So
Yes.
a person, just sticking with a visually impaired person, as opposed to everyone. Well, I can tack that on later. You know, with a white cane, they can cross anywhere,
They can cross anywhere,
and traffic should come to a halt.
and the same
It
with me.
doesn't have to be on a crosswalk or an intersection.
Anywhere,
They technically, because they may not know where they are.
correct.
Now, so that would extend to any person with a disability.
You
can
have-
cross anywhere.
Particularly with blind, when you're crossing the street, you'll oftentimes get your back heel and touch it to get the direction you're gonna walk. Well, now that if you do not spend money and put 2 curb cuts at an intersection and just put 1 in the center, you do not
Very
have,
confusing.
you don't know if there's 1 or 2, so you may end up going right across diagonally in it. So that's common.
And you've got the curb cuts with the dimples or whatever.
Yes, so
That's been
it's a known problem. Anytime you see a blind person who's actually totally blind, that person is fearless. Actually,
Right?
they're fearful, and that's what keeps them alive. But yeah,
Great.
So,
those who have light, dark things can many times get a clue to what's happening.
and you're listening, and that's where the
Correct,
electric
put it all
vehicles
together.
creates a problem. But, so now I want to throw a ringer at you. Because this
I'm
is,
gonna put this last thing up because I
Oh.
borrowed somebody's slides to do this, and if I don't pay for
oh,
it,
the thank you slide?
oh, well, shoot, I'll
You're
throw it
going
out.
backwards. Grab the webs.
There.
and the thank
I just put it on so it's on
you.
live stream and then, okay, yes.
So basically, the first pages was everything. Everything applies to anyone with a disability, period, case closed, carry a white cane,
Yeah.
whatever. So what about, it says individual disability. What's the appropriate, as a person who drives, what is the appropriate behavior when it comes to a person with a mental disability? We have people in this valley, we have had,
Bridgewaters.
and we continue to have, people with mental disabilities who stand on the curb and wave their arms and yell at traffic.
He's dead.
Oh,
He was run over.
we
There's a
have,
new one.
we have.
Mhm.
We have a new one?
Oh,
He's
yeah.
hanging out there.
I'm sorry, I've been down in
Yeah.
DC for half a year, so.
And you don't get around as much. We have new people on
Oh.
both sides of the bridge. And the question for a driver is you're not sure if they want to cross the street.
Yes.
Or if they're just
Talking.
waving their arms and yelling at traffic. Are we to come to a stop?
That's a judgment call for you to make. If I was that person, and I've seen that person time and time and time again, and I know that he doesn't want to cross, I'd probably just do it cautiously. But if I've never seen that person before,
Cautious.
I would stop and wave them on. And if they start running at me, I'd go like hell.
I think it's, and I've seen it in Spokane, I think it's going to become a perpetual condition.
Okay, and
People with mental illness out on, may or may not be homeless, may or may not be panhandling.
Absolutely.
But are gonna be out on the streets, out on the sidewalks, capturing the attention of drivers, and you're not sure.
yes.
Maybe they wanna stop you and get a donation, or maybe they're.
They have to be disabled for these laws to apply. Not look disabled, they must be disabled.
Are we still doing person first? Can we say has a
Yes.
disability?
Has a disability.
She's gonna call us on that.
Okay.
So-
What did I
Kind
say?
of disabled.
So, right.
With the disability, just a
Okay.
homeless person, an impoverished person, a person panhandling do not fall into that category whatsoever.
They can.
If they have.
Well, they could, but.
The where you run into, and he and I are getting to attorneys. Right. If you have an inkling something is wrong with that person, and you continue on, they walk in front of you, if it turns out they are indeed disabled,
Have a disability.
have a disability, that's gonna be tough.
I know.
I work for disability and I don't even.
Okay, but you had knowledge, you had a concern, that's probably enough to have knowledge. Because there was something that triggered you. And so I would say that probably would bring in the protections and the liability issues.
There are more panhandlers or people who are requesting personal donations, whatever you want to call it, over across the river in Clarkston and in Lewiston, for reasons that have been explained to me but I still don't understand. And they're not protected by ADA unless they have a disability. And many of them have dogs with
Yes,
them
but
as a
this
way
is-
to attract attention, but they're not personal assistance dogs.
Yes.
They're not service animals, they're just
Dogs.
pets that might attract more donations.
I will tell you, there's a
From
whole other
warm-hearted
story
people.
with service dogs in Idaho now, and how it's defined, what they are.
Yeah.
And there's as many statutes, they were included with all this, so there's a whole lot of stuff even involved in training them. And again, it comes to knowledge. So if you kill a dog that the person who's panhandling runs out, the dog runs out in front of you, the odds are pretty good that's not a service dog. Because if it was a service dog, it wouldn't have done that.
It wouldn't have let you get into the street with the service.
There, and the scope, the service dogs are trained to use about an area, probably about 3 to 5 feet. It's quite a zone. So that's their area of interest. And if they stay within that, I would always consider them if I saw a person going, probably that. But if it's just a person looks normal and they got a sign like this and you actually know their history, which they find me, by the way, Mark. And the people that are out there with they find me. And when I'm going somewhere, they talk to me. It's just,
Panhandlers?
yeah, I got,
Well,
DC,
service
I got
animals are
panhandlers.
usually wearing a vest or whatever they call them, and these dogs
I would advise people to do that, but that's not a
aren't
requirement.
wearing them.
Yeah.
But I think it's important that we educate ourselves and hopefully
Yes.
by extension educate the community, because none of these things are going away. In fact, they're going to just become more common and more prevalent as the community gets bigger and has a more diverse population.
I have not done letters to the editors, and when I do a letter to the editor, I generally, depending on the issue, go statewide. So I end up in all the papers around the state. I have not done this one for the simple reason it's too messy. It's, until it gets clarified, I'm not gonna go on a whole horse education thing. I may talk to the chief of police, but it's just a little bit too messy, and Idaho's so far ahead of where everyone else is. Not even Washington has this. So, any other questions? I'm done. I have no idea how to shut that off. Maybe. Nope. I guess I
When
can
you
turn it off.
mentioned, if I might ask, or since you know that about us live streaming, is that audio only or is it camera?
No, it's actually capturing video.
The camera.
I believe from I've only seen
If you're on
the
the city's website.
live stream from the Bell, so
It's there.
is that?
If you're on
Remember,
the
I can
city-
go log on
If
to
you're
it
on
right
the
now.
city's website.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just wondering if the live stream pick up the PowerPoint.
Oh, yeah. I think it does. But that may be if IT's in there or not.
All right, well, thank you, Eric.
Yep.
That was very informative, actually, and brings up things.
Anybody else
Think
wants to hear this
that's- yeah.
storyline? I'm welcome to invite me, and I'll be happy to speak.
That would be a really good idea for our groups. Just traffic safety in general, I think. So next on the agenda though was snow shoveling. I just wanted to give a little bit of an update on where I got with that. I recently joined Kiwanis.
I'm in there.
Are you in? I've seen you on the email threads. I got
Yeah.
tricked by Travis Brusso.
All right.
Right.
It's a good thing.
I really enjoyed it. I say tricked lightly. But I did bring it up at the first meeting I went to, just as kind of a, hey, what do we think about this? And they did say that their key club for the high schools
That's a good one.
would, especially if schools were on a delay because of the snow, that if they were given the capabilities, Kiwanis itself would probably not be able to volunteer because of work hours and such like that, but that the Key Club, which is comprised of high school students, would be probably interested. I
That's
also,
a great idea.
Is
Right?
there a key club?
Yeah, and you know, one of the things.
At which high school?
LHS,
We might ask at the meeting or ask whoever's present right now, does the insurance for Kiwanis cover the Key Club? That's something I hadn't thought about. I know it covers us. And there's somebody in town.
I would imagine they still pay dues.
I don't know. It all comes down to a contract. I don't
Have to take a
know.
look at the charter.
There's someone in town who was a Kiwanis, who was injured on a Kiwanis activity. They didn't have the insurance.
Something for us to look at for Action Club.
Yeah.
In the end, insurance always rules.
It does.
What you can and cannot do.
Yeah, so Action, or Key Club. And two, when I did hear back from the college, they said that because of student sports and the erratic schedules that people have, that student athletes probably would not be able to commit to anything, but if we looked at ASLCSE, the student body,
Right?
then they generally have to fill volunteer hours. So,
Okay, that's sweet.
right? And they live in an area that is populated with a lot of people. So those were a couple of the options that that I came up with. And I don't know if anybody else had any ideas. I know last year, Mark, you said the Mormon Church did a lot of.
Well, by the time this all got organized, we didn't have snow, of course.
Right.
And by the time this was going to be on our agenda, I thought the report I'd heard, but I didn't know you were coordinating it, I thought it was through City Hall, was LCSC student athletes had agreed they would do this.
No, it had been an idea. It had been a suggestion that I was supposed to reach out. So each time it popped up on the agenda and we didn't get to talk about it, I never got the opportunity
Athletic
to say it.
director
Yeah.
is not available right now, I think. I don't see us.
Look,
Yeah. Am I wrong?
I am uncertain. I have not spoken to her about it since the winter, actually.
Yeah, I think she's
So
probably
the-
not available for
So the misunderstanding, I don't want to repeat a misunderstanding, given that I had already repeated what I thought was said, was LCSC student athletes would shovel sidewalks. So that is not the case, that has never been the
That
case.
has never been the case.
That
That had been a
They
suggestion,
are
so
not,
no, that,
they don't want to receive phone calls.
no,
Okay.
they did
Yes,
not.
We have a process.
we had arranged, after receiving many calls at Interlink, during snowstorms, this is a very passing phenomenon. We don't get a lot of large snowstorms that don't melt right away, that accumulate and that people are told they have to make sure their walks are clear. And such people want it done immediately, obviously, which is not the kind of organization Interlink is. But we made arrangements that LDS Church, our contact person is former retired chief of police Bedford,
Oh, yeah.
and that he had a bunch of people lined up, that they would do it if called into action. And, again, we don't tend to have snowstorms that pile up snow that hangs around for weeks at a time here in the South. But when it happens, older people who cannot shovel their own walks do have a need. And that was always the question, is where to turn to, who can help them. So that is where this past winter, on the couple of days that it was an issue, that's where we directed.
Okay, so that question then becomes, one, is it appropriate for the city to be doing it? And I think we've already talked about it, would be a recommendation from here, if
Yes.
nothing else. Then two, who's going to coordinate it? I mean, it's just like,
That was where I believe Nikki had said that the city could put up a website with information that you could put, that they would be willing to filter information.
But not actually take
Disseminate
phone
it.
calls and refer.
No.
So, doesn't really solve the problem.
No, but that was where they just need the information to put on the website. So that was where DAC came in, was to try to facilitate like a coalition of volunteers that would be able to put their contact information on the city webpage. And I believe it may have even gone further in depth and even said, like, you put in an address, then it'll pop up like, oh, this is the closest volunteer, this is who you call.
Okay, so this is actually a recommendation DAC could make to council and the mayor. Yes.
For the website,
No.
you mean just a
Yes.
city-wide coalition?
What do we think is the city's possible way to engage and assist the population? That doesn't mean staff saying what they're saying. It's like, do we have a recommendation that we believe, if it's feasible, that the city consider doing it, and the process would be up to the city if the council said, yes, let's do that. We can suggest having the process of having a contact point and making these relations. Then you're gonna run into the issue of liability insurance, because you've got the city saying, contact these people, and then the city have a relationship enough to have liability issues. So it's not simple, but that is in the area of a recommendation. You've never made a recommendation yet, I'm gonna guess, or been here when we have done.
I don't think we're quite at that point.
Okay.
But as Nikki said at a previous meeting, we might as well talk about snow shoveling in advance to when it's needed.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and that's why I'm thinking, if we're gonna do something, right now they're in the budget cycle. They're starting it, and they've actually got a lot of it already done. And it's like the recommendations, if it's gonna cost money, should come in during the budget cycle.
Right.
And can be that individuals can go to a city council meeting, and when their citizens comment, they can make a comment as an individual, but I am a member of the Disability Advisory Commission. I'm not speaking for it, I'm speaking as an individual. This is a possibility. And that's how it's been done in the past, and things have occurred, but it's just a timing issue. My timing, I'm always looking at budgeting, because I've had enough experience with, it takes years to get people to move the budgets. So,
Madam Chair. So, first of all, I don't think the city would have any liability if all they did was posting on a website, here's places you can call, here's outside groups. I don't see how that. I
or
don't see how
never
that
sued anybody.
Right, I don't see that really creates any liability, especially if they list a disclaimer. We're not vouching for these people, we're not vouching for these groups.
Not guaranteed
And
it'll happen.
Yeah.
City attorneys, that's their job, and risk management.
So now, let me go back and forth. I know we're talking about snow shoveling, but this could pertain even to other things. So first of all, as I have beat the drum ever since the city's water reservoir burst and flooded the neighborhood, not everybody uses the internet. So
Yes.
the city trying to defend itself by saying, well, just put information on our website, there you go, we have informed the public. No, you haven't. In fact, one could make the case that the most vulnerable people, senior citizens, people with disabilities, are the least likely to get the information in that method. So you can do that, but just, and I'm talking to the city when I say this, you can do that, but just be aware you're not getting the information to the people who possibly need it the most. So that's one thing. Secondly, because Interlink has looked at and continues to look at this issue over and over again of people wanting volunteers, needing services that we don't provide, and yet somebody out there might want to be a do-gooder. And for those of you who've been around a long time and may remember a long time ago, previous director of Interlink, by the name of Ray, we'll just leave it at that, but who used to publish what was called a Monday list.
Mhm.
Here's a bunch of requests of people who need help. And I'm not 100% sure how that worked. I don't think he published their names and addresses.
There were addresses.
So, yeah, I want you to be thinking, not merely of liability in the legal sense, but
Service.
of risk and danger. So people need help, and they have a name and they have an address. And by definition, that would make them vulnerable to people with ill intent. And then people who maybe want to help, and you, like I just said, among the LDS church, you know, do you just take for granted, oh, okay, you want to help, we'll dispatch you somewhere, without any screening. Now, Interlink does criminal background checks on all of our volunteers.
As does OUI.
Yeah. But that's not cost effective for a one and done, a one-shot kind of thing. And just last Friday was the United Way Day of Caring. So they dispatched a lot of volunteers from businesses out to places where people, you know, needed help. And as far as I know, nobody screened anything. So there's a screening process, and not just screening for criminal background check. There would also be screening for, does this person have the skills to do what's being requested? Do they have the skills if it's a technical type project? Do they have the health if you're going to ask the person you need to climb a ladder and clean out a gutter? Interlink had to quit doing that when our insurance company, long before I was working there, when our insurance company said, yeah, we're not going to cover your volunteers climbing the ladders. They shouldn't be doing anything involving the climbing of the ladders. It's like, okay, we have to quit doing those services. So insurance companies dictate to us, the nonprofit, what they will and will not cover, which then suddenly caused us to retreat from doing things we previously had done. And so before I go any further, it looks like Eric has his hand up. He wants to comment on something.
Make a motion to form an ad hoc committee to actually look to making a recommendation and presenting it at the August meeting for consideration, or to present it
Recommendation on what? Shoveling
on
sidewalks?
shoveling sidewalk for the city of Lewiston to look at doing the process that we've talked about. Is that clear enough?
It is not to me.
Okay, so what I'm saying is making a motion that you as the chair get people to serve on a subcommittee or just an ad hoc committee. An ad hoc is there just for the purpose of that item and then it disappears. So it's not a permanent condition. That ad hoc committee would talk about what we've been discussing here on the snow shoveling and the issue of what the city has said versus whatever, and consider making a recommendation for the entire DAC committee to consider for a process for the city to actually take on. Or they may say, let's not even do it. But it's just their suggestion to us. No action items or anything in it. It's come to us as a thought for consideration, and we, as the committee, look at it and decide, though we're gonna do this, can we make changes to it? Let's make this recommendation or not. And that's where our real skill set is, and that's what our purpose is to make recommendations to the council and through the mayor. So my motion is to make a ad hoc committee to give the entire committees a suggestion for a recommendation to the city council to address the snow shoveling issue prior to or at the August meeting.
Our August meeting.
Our August meeting. That would call for a second to the motion.
We have a second.
I'll second.
So move it.
Then we have.
Would you say your name, because Nikki might
Oh,
not know.
this is Amy Brogan.
Yeah, if she's
Seconding.
listening and she can't.
How many people are we looking for?
You have 1, 2,
3.
3.
We have
Up to 3 for
7 members
last
of our
Yeah, you want to keep it below the.
4, yeah.
I would be interested in
Okay.
being
So
on
determine a number.
3.
Mark does everything in town.
Just say all in favor.
Oh, all in favor?
Aye. It's up to you who's on the
And
committee.
now
Oh,
you,
it's up to
and
me.
now you would
Yes.
appoint.
Well, I would,
That was my.
I would like the volunteers first and foremost.
I can volunteer as a resource for the actual process because I've been involved from the beginning of actually how it works.
Great.
You know what, I might
So you
appoint,
can appoint me
Can I-
if you want.
would you like to be appointed?
Yeah, but if it's the 3
Can
of
I
us,
appoint
don't go
somebody-
above that.
Can I, well, if you're just a resource,
I'm just a resource, I don't want to be on the
can we
committee.
appoint somebody who's not here?
Well, that's even safer, because they're not.
I would like to appoint Matt Ruth.
Great.
Great,
Oh, you meant, but he's on the commission.
Yes.
yeah.
You guys, the way that they dealt, I feel that Addis dealt with the reservoir was pretty spot on, and I think he would have some really great ideas on snow shovel removal.
Just as we're talking for process, you can appoint non-committee people to a subcommittee like that.
Ah,
Well, yeah, they're.
You can.
if
I
they're
mean,
willing.
whether or not
If they're
they're
willing to,
willing.
yeah.
so I could just pick anybody.
Well, on here, you can appoint someone who's not here, but they do have the right to say no.
So if I might retake the floor, that I only temporarily relinquished.
Did we vote yes on this? We did, didn't we?
Yeah. So, just to give you an example, because we discuss this with some frequency at Interlink. For instance, we have a subscription to a very, very robust software program that we use for our transportation scheduling and for other requests for wheelchair ramps and other things. But it schedules people and it knows, has a sense of time, day of the week, hour of the day, that kind of thing. Right now, and for the last year and a half, Interlink has done self-assigning. Clients call in when they need a ride, and we put it onto the software program. And our drivers are given a password, and they log in and they see all the requests. Now, they've been vetted, they've been background checked, all of that. And they see all the requests, and they can pick and choose who they want to drive and when they want to drive.
Like Uber.
It saves us a huge amount of time from having to call and pay people to drive, and most of our drivers do that. The clients would be able to actually post their requests, but 98% of them don't use computers, and so they can't do that. We have to do that for them. Now, it has been discussed around the office about, well, we could open our software program in fact, one staff member called it a modern day version of Ray's Monday list. We could open it to other requests. The problem, besides transportation, the problem becomes then who do we open it to for volunteers to help provide those services if they have not been criminally background checked by us, if they have not been vetted by us, and we're allowing them to see the list of requests. And there are other social media platforms that do this kind of thing. I need help, who can help me?
Right.
But wow, the vulnerability of nefarious people, of getting into those systems and taking advantage of people. And so I don't know if our committee can discuss this or the whole commission, but trying to match helpers with people in need, but keep out the nefarious types.
I do think, Mark, if I may, in the interest of time, that would be something perfect to talk about in the ad hoc committee, I feel, would be the
Sure.
logistics.
Right.
It's up to you what you assign to a committee as the chair.
Do I have to
And
send
I
that
just
now?
want people
No.
thinking about that.
Okay.
It's not a question of we don't want to do this or it can't be done. It actually can be done.
Right.
But there are
But
risks,
you need
there are
me.
risks and dangers involved.
I think you need me so you can approve your minutes.
Yes.
So-
Approval of minutes. Oh, so we will move further discussion of this, the ad hoc committee of Mark Havens, myself, and Matt Ruth.
You just did it. You
There.
don't need to move it.
Okay. Well, I'm just
Yeah.
moving on. Active agenda, approval of minutes. We are looking to approve the
Move to
minutes.
approve.
Second.
There we are.
That was Amy
Approved.
voting again.
Is that for March and April?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. For
All in
active,
favor?
all in favor?
I
Aye.
would remind people that about that survey, the community development survey, according to this, I forgot it had a deadline. It's open on the city's website till May 14th, so that's only 2 more days.
I've done so many surveys out.
If
That's
we
your
want,
only action item, right?
well, there's technically one more, but I don't understand exactly what action is supposed to be taken on it. I know that we wanted to bring up the budget and what we could go recommend to council, but I don't know of anything
I have one
that's.
thing.
What is that?
Okay, I've been working on this as an individual, and the prior Lewiston database or system for operating system included a ticketing system. Okay, and that ticketing system was modified to address any requests for services from the various different city departments. And it was well organized, well structured, very responsive. You actually knew where things are when they were resolved. If not, you knew who was doing it. It's a pretty common practice in larger cities. I use DC 311, same structure, same type of format. I've got a sidewalk issue where the bushes are hanging over and I can't get through with the wheelchair. Just call that in, it goes under streets, ADA request, goes to the person who does it. They follow up, I know they responded, I can put in pictures, etc. They can do that. Then when they changed the system, they didn't take that over because there was one primary user of the other system, me. They said they advertised it, they had it on their website. I don't think anybody knew about it, unless I told them about it. They could do it for about $50,000, but it needs to probably be budgeted into IT. The mayor was looking into it, and it kind of got dropped with all the stuff that's been going on. It's a budgeting issue. I was actually trying to make an appointment with the mayor to discuss getting it done, because I have tried to get, I actually made a public records request about all the ways I can request a city service thing. One form, PDF, you gotta fill it out manually. You have to bring it to whoever it is. Good luck finding the person who it is. So it's, for me particularly, I have at least 50 service requests that I could have made, even being gone for 2 months to DC. But I'm not making them because it's so difficult. So that's a budget item request. I'm gonna go to the mayor about it. We could make a recommendation, but budget's gonna be set by July, I think.
I think it'll
More or
be in a
less.
fairly solid form by July, and then in August it gets
It gets
very
the
set. Then
three-
they have the 3 public
The
hearings.
3 shots to get it added there, switch it. But when you're in August, you're taking it from somebody else to give it to you.
Essentially, we will.
Yeah, and boy, the fights are,
Madam Chair, I don't know that we have topics for the next June meeting.
Right.
Could this be a topic
This we did.
of
yeah,
this,
that'd be great.
of
And
this system?
I'll talk to the mayor and say, we're talking about making it so we can do a recommendation. We don't know whether that's gonna even get to that.
Well,
So,
and, correct me if
I
I'm wrong,
wouldn't
but
be
was it,
speaking for DAC.
but part of the agenda too, it was on requesting what the city has budgeted for ADA.
Oh,
And
that
what-
would be good to know. That would be talking to the finance office. And
Thank you for loaning this to me.
I know we're all sharing.
Yeah.
Discussion on what the city departments have budgeted. We can't have that discussion unless someone
Yeah.
provided us with the information.
Right,
which we
and-
haven't.
And I
that-
don't understand what any
money-
action
And
we would
that money
take on
is
that.
spread
Well, just
across
knowing what's there,
departments.
and then we'd
Right.
make a recommendation on it, because they could have pulled all their funding, we wouldn't know about it.
Mhm.
True.
If you haven't been involved in budgeting, it is literally sausage making. With somebody gone and a new system, I don't know how they're working in it, but I'm pretty sure it's more open. I could actually get the spreadsheets, I just make a request, I get the current spreadsheets where things are allocated so I can figure it out. I would always attend budget meetings. And this is when we're trying to get the ADA transition plan done.
But we've been told that it's spread throughout the budget.
Yes.
It's not in one place. So the library, has expenditures for ADA purposes, and of course, Public Works does, and Public Transit.
And they're all gonna be
The
identified.
transit program does.
So they should be in the spreadsheet, they should be identified. Those are things that go on the annual update to the
Well,
transition
Nikki
plan.
might be able to dig it out
Yeah.
through the finance
I just-
department.
I just talked
If that
to
could
finance.
be, if that could be a main item in our next meeting.
That would give us more time.
But the chair can actually ask finance if we can get a copy of it.
So essentially, we're just carrying over that action
Mhm.
item, because there's nothing, we don't have it in front of us, and there's nothing we can do on it today.
And you could have that by the next meeting.
That's good.
And you could send it out to us prior to, because it's just information. But ask Nikki if it's okay.
I'll send it to her first and ask her to send it out.
Yeah.
So do we need a motion to approve to move that action item to the next one?
Well, we don't have a quorum. Wait, no,
You.
4 is a quorum.
So,
Oh, to
so
continue
moved.
it? Yeah, to continue.
I second.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and that was Jessica Granger that.
Okay, now,
Seconded.
just as a process thing, when you're going from motion, second, any discussion,
Any discussion?
and then vote.
Oh, perfect.
And that's the preferred way of doing it.
And that is what I don't know, Elizabeth. Maybe
And that's-
you're nervous about.
Well, and
Thank
even
you,
if you
Eric.
read about it and you know about it, then when it comes time to do it, it takes
The
time
practice
actually
of
putting
it, that
it
is
into.
true.
And a
right,
lot of
and then
groups
it
forget
becomes
about
more
it because it's so customary.
second
But it's
nature.
important, not so much here, but in any entity,
Mhm.
when you get into a question where there's a dispute, and it could go into a lawsuit, the official record of a meeting is what the approved minutes state.
Mhm.
Even if you know something was different, they have a higher evidentiary value than your statement. So if you screw up on the rules, that opens the door for people to say, no, we don't, and it was never discussed, never called for, etc. So that's only why I just kind of, that's the process.
Future agenda items, we discussed,
I've been involved in litigation, Mark.
have you? We discussed addressing the ADA budget. I'm not sure if that necessarily needs to be under the active agenda or just
It's
discussion.
that, when you get into the finances, we're gonna find out from the spreadsheet
Mhm.
what's actually been allocated in each of the departments.
Correct.
And if not, we need to make a recommendation that they do so, class it that way. Actually, we could probably just talk to someone and say, look, if you're gonna put this, talk to Dustin Johnson, who's head of Public Works.
Mhm.
Say, look, this needs to be done, so that can automatically just be put in to the annual update to the ADA transition plan. And that's because if there's a question on ADA issues, the first place you go to is the plan hasn't been approved, then you go to the annual things and what's in there. And that's all evidentiary. If there's nothing put in, and it looks like you did no ADA work at all,
Mhm.
even though it was, you have to go back and dig that out. That's a lot of stuff.
Does sound like a lot of stuff there.
That's the only reason I'm stating it. It just saves everybody
So-
a headache.
To put that on the active agenda then.
I don't think we need to.
But for the sake of expediency, if there were for some reason to become.
If there was a question of, can we find out where the ADA funds actually are? So, and if they don't put on that it's associated with ADA, we can't find it. So, if somebody asks, the city can answer just by doing a database search.
And I will ask on that. In the interest of time,
I'm done.
do we have any commissioner comments?
I made mine when we're talking about this.
I'm guessing no staff liaison comments, so we can adjourn at 1:05.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, thanks, everyone.
So IT probably shouldn't.